Up, everybody? Welcome back to U.S. history. All right, where we'd left off in the last chunk of notes, and really you should have one page going where I broke a lecture up into several different chunks about like the intro to World War II, and we've specifically so far just looked at what was going on in Europe. And kind of the rise of the Nazis and what was going on with Hitler inside of Nazi Germany, and then we had talked about him making the peace pact with Stalin and the Soviet Union, and then finally invading Poland was like the final straw, and that led to France and Britain declaring war on him, and bam, there you go, we're in a war again. So where we had left off, the new German tactics had done outstanding on the battlefield. They had overrun their old rival from World War I, France, in about a month period. That shocked everybody. It made Hitler look like some like strategic military mastermind. In real life, it wasn't so much anything he had done. It was that the German leadership in the military, their field marshals and generals, had realized that, we just need to restructure things, that technology has advanced so much that it doesn't make sense to organize in the old World War I way. Now we're going to have different units of like armored divisions and supported by planes and these quick strike tactics. So warfare had changed, and much of the world had not gotten the memo and realized it, but Germany had. Now, where we're picking up today, this is going to be a little addition to what was going on in Europe, where I'm going to have you draw a line at the end of the notes that we've completed so far up to this point, and then you're going to put in the Battle of Britain, and we're going to talk about what goes on in the next few months after France falls. So if you look at my cursor here on the map, Germany is in the center of Europe. Germany's gotten a lot bigger because they had annexed Austria down here. They had taken Czechoslovakia, and now Germany had taken a bunch of land from Poland. Then on the other side, as Britain and France declared war, but they were kind of chickens and they were just like beefing up their defenses and getting ready for another trench war. That gave Germany all the time it needed to get its army across Germany again. And when it attacked, it knocked France out really quickly. So really, then over here, Netherlands, Belgium, and France, that's all become part of like Nazi-controlled territory, or occupied France, occupied Europe, they'd call it at the time. Now, Great Britain is hanging on right now. Hitler, after having that outstanding success and toppling the French government, he was expecting Great Britain would fall very quickly too. But fortunately for Great Britain, it had something really awesome going for it, and that's kind of its country's geography. It's an island, right? So, like, had Hitler been able to get his tanks, his armored divisions across the English Channel and onto British soil, almost certainly Great Britain would have fallen just as fast as France did. But it's a very risky maneuver trying to move men like your regular infantry and all your heavy armored vehicles like your tanks and stuff across a body of water, especially when the other side, your enemy, has a really good navy and could be sinking those ships as they're trying to cross the water. Now, Hitler had a plan all ready to go that his generals had come up with. It was Operation Sea Lion. But at the last minute, he says, we're not going to try to invade England because the British Navy's over there and it's really risky. And honestly, if he had tried to do that, he could have lost half of his army and never even got them onto British soil. So it was a very high risk maneuver. So what he decides to do is he's going to use his new Air Force. The Luftwaffe is the German name for it, and he's going to try to bomb Great Britain into submission. He's going to use what he thinks is his superior air power just to bomb them out of the war. All right, moving ahead here. So I would want you to put in on your notes today the Battle of Britain. In this, I don't have a date up there or a time period for you, but basically it's a battle for like this. It's a year-long struggle to control the skies over England. All right. You could put a date up there, though. So next to Battle of Britain, I would put it's like late 1940 through early 1941, kind of about a year period or so. You won't have to know any exact beginning or end date for it. Now, Britain ends up being a little tougher than Hitler expected. I guess in the first, backtracking a little bit, France fell much quicker than anybody expected, Hitler included. But then after France had fallen so quick, that gets everybody's expectations up really high, including Hitler's. And he's thinking Britain's going to fall really quick. It won't be long now, any day. But that doesn't end up happening. The guy that's running Great Britain at the time is their new prime minister is this dude named Winston Churchill, who is a giant of world history in the 20th century. Many historians say he is the most important man of the 20th century or the 1900s. For years now, he's been saying that Hitler is evil. The Nazi Party's evil. You can't negotiate with these guys. They will stab you in the back. They're evil. They're rotten. They're going to kill as many people as they can. Now, he had not been prime minister very long, but he had been essentially in parliament or like the British version of Congress for a long time. And he had been one of the voices always saying, Hitler's a bad dude. We can't negotiate with him. Well, then after the war all breaks out, Winston Churchill ends up looking like a prophet because he had been calling this out kind of all along, and then he gets elevated to the top spot. So he is determined. He's a little bulldog and says, no way are we going to negotiate with this guy. It'll be horrible for all of us if we do. Hitler is trying to bomb Great Britain into submission. Like I said, initially, he's really focusing on military targets. He's bombing like their airfields. He's bombing naval bases. He's bombing radar towers. It's starting to work, actually. Like in the opening months of the Battle of Britain, Great Britain is in big trouble, and they are teetering on the brink of collapse. Now, Hitler gets impatient, though. That's something that we see over and over again with this guy. If you really look deep into Hitler's character, he's got a lot of personality flaws. One of them was he was often impatient, and he also liked to micromanage his generals and kind of like tell them what to do. So a few months into this strategy, even though it was actually starting to work, Hitler says, we got to get this done quicker. And he switches, very key point for you here, he switches from bombing military targets to civilian targets. And I did put in there, it's a very big mistake. What his logic is that the British people, once I terrorize them, once we go in and we start bombing their cities and killing women and children, they'll demand that their politicians sign a peace treaty and they'll back out of the war, and that'll be that, and Britain will fall. What happens is the exact opposite of that. So Hitler starts bombing civilians and killing innocent people. Well, then Winston Churchill, he shows this in the newspapers and on the news cycles and stuff, and he says, look, I told you this guy was evil. We can't negotiate him now because it's going to be bad times ahead if the Nazis take us over and nobody is fighting against him, and he wins this war. The British people buy into that, and they look at what Hitler's doing is evidence that he is a rotten, evil guy. So they become more determined than ever that they are going to stand up to Great Britain, and they won't come to terms with them. No peace treaty, nothing like that. They're fighting this through to the absolute bloody end. Now that Hitler is bombing cities like London, that's horrible if you're a person that lives in London, but it actually was a good thing for the British military. The Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force, Royal Air Force, the RAF, that actually gives them a little breathing room. It gives them time to rebuild their bases up again, to rebuild their radar towers, and it makes it so that they're actually better able to fight against the Germans. Hitler still is impatient, and this is about 9 months after the bombing raids had started. He finally has a huge, I don't know how do you say it? He just is going to shake everything up because he's so impatient with what's going on in Britain. He comes to this new strategy that is the quickest road to London is through Moscow. Now let's go back to that map for a second. If I can get that up there. Oh, man. Sorry. There we go. Okay, here's Germany in the middle. The quickest road to London, which is my cursor as is over here, is through Moscow, which is way over here. How does that possibly make any sense? Well, if you're looking at Europe at this time, basically the center of Europe all through here is German occupied territory. Great Britain is the one country that is fighting a war with Germany right now. Remember, the Soviet Union and Germany, so Russia or the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, they had made a peace pact together, which was a really weird thing. And I talked about that in the last chunk of notes because everybody was expecting those two countries to go to war with each other. Hitler, in his book, had said that his ultimate goal was to get living space for the German people. And like you're only seeing a small fraction of what the Soviet Union is. It's land-wise the largest country on planet Earth. That's Hitler's ultimate master goal. He's only made that peace pact with Stalin just so he could go over here and beat up on the British and French and finish that part of the war first, because he didn't want to get caught in a two-fronted war again like Germany had in World War I. But now Hitler gets impatient over here, and he's like, man, I don't know if I'll ever be able to cross the English Channel like I want to. If I can go take out the Soviet Union, this massive country over here, well, then you're going to see there is just a sea of Nazi territory, and the only one standing up against them would have been little old Great Britain right there. And I think Hitler probably was correct that had he been able to take out the Soviet Union and got them to surrender and took all of their land and resources and all that, Great Britain probably would have been brought to its knees, and that likely might have been the end of World War II in Europe. But it's going to end up being a huge strategic error for Hitler, because the Soviet Union, just kind of like how Hitler had underestimated Great Britain, he also underestimates the Soviet Union. Now, initially, things go great for the Germans when they go and invade Russia, but that's all going to turn horribly wrong for the Germans, just really kind of about a year down the road. So, last key point I'm going to leave you with today. Make sure, like sometimes I'm calling that country that Germany is going to be engaged in this big war with the Soviet Union. Sometimes I call it the Soviet Union. Sometimes I call it Russia. That gets a little confusing to some kids. So if you aren't already aware of this, put this little bottom line I have on the notes here. The USSR, which is the United Soviet Socialist Republics, or the Soviet Union, or Russia. If I say any of those, I'm talking about the same place. Today, the Soviet Union's gone and it's called Russia again. If you go back to like the beginning of World War I, it was called Russia. But there was a revolution that happened, and for a while there was kind of like a name change. So just know that that's the communist country that is fighting against the Nazis. And if I use any of those terms, I'm talking about the same place. So that's kind of where we're going to leave it off today. Shorter than average chunk of notes for you, but we'll be back the rest of the week as I'm laying out the rest of the groundwork for what's going on in kind of like the first half of World War II. All right, see ya.